have a problem of identification. We do not know whom we are. And that is why this gathering is of great symbolic importance, because it is an act of identification. We are saying that we identify with the African people of the African continent.
How Europe Underdeveloped Africa by Walter Rodney delves into the historical and socioeconomic factors that have contributed to the underdevelopment of Africa by European powers. Rodney examines the exploitive nature of colonialism, the impact of slavery, and how these historical events have shaped the current state of affairs on the African continent.
I have met brothers and sisters who say that their mother tongue, quote unquote, is French, Spanish, Dutch, Portuguese, as well as English, which we speak. And because of this, we have a problem of identification. We do not know whom we are. And that is why this gathering is of great symbolic importance, because it is an act of identification. We are saying that we identify with the African people of the African continent. We are saying that we are an African people. And when we make this identification, have no illusions about the fact that this is a very revolutionary initiative. It is a rejection of every other form of identification which the white society has asked us to accept. Let me draw your attention to something which white universities and white libraries practice. And this is a university community. Numerous universities lie around this land. Go into their libraries and check the Library of Congress card. Under Europe or European, you will find all entries listed concerning the continent of Europe. You will also find entries listed about Europeans in East Africa, Europeans in North Africa, Europeans in Asia and Australia. Look under the Chinese, you will find entries listed not only for mainland China, but for Malaysia and for the Chinese in North America. But look on the Africa and the African, the only entries on the African relate to the continent itself. There are no entries on the Africans overseas. There is no such category. Africans who have been raped from the continent mysteriously disappear and become Negro.
The book sheds light on the systematic exploitation of Africa's resources and labor, highlighting the lasting consequences of these actions on African societies. Walter Rodney's work, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, presents a compelling analysis of the complex dynamics that have perpetuated Africa's underdevelopment. Rodney skillfully dissects the historical injustices inflicted upon the African continent by European powers, revealing the deep-rooted exploitation that has hindered Africa's progress.
The problem is much more fundamental than that. We are saying that working class people will get them only when they take the initiative, when they move themselves. Nobody else can give it to the gift. Someone who comes claiming to be a liberator is either deluding himself or he's trying to delude the people. He either doesn't understand the process of real life or he is trying to suggest that you do not understand it. And so long as he suffers from a warped concept of politics as being leadership, we are going to be in a lot of trouble.
In our society at the present time, some specific rights which had been won through struggle by the people in the colonial period are now in the process of being eroded. One takes the most obvious, the electoral process. In Guyana, it is now, I think, widely known inside the country and outside of the country that first of all, the Americans intervened along with the British to abort the democratic process from 1953 onwards. And secondly, that once the present government got into power, it extended the scale of electoral fraud so that We cannot claim at the present time to be a politically enfranchised people. We cannot claim to have chosen our own national government. And that is one level. Below that level, you find that there is reproduced in every facet of the national life the same anti-democratic tendencies. So that there are no local government elections, for instance. They have local government elections that are postponed every time they come due with ease, with no concern whatsoever, with no reaction. There are no elections taking place within certain trade unions where workers at that basic level should be choosing their representatives to deal with their material interests. And once that anti-democratic principle is established, we see then step by step we move backwards. And I say backwards very deliberately. These were not rights or privileges which were handed to us by the British. The right to have your union and to have a democratic union was won through struggle in this very century. The right to have democratic elections was won only in the late 1940s and in 1953 when there was universal adult suffrage. So that these recently conquered rights are now in the process of being withheld, eroded, dissipated in one form or fashion. In the early years of independence or the last years of colonialism, we had certain illusions that having inherited the formal modes of political procedure from the British, that of necessity we would not follow the paths that had been followed by other Latin American territories or by countries such as Haiti, Honduras, the Valley, and the Dominican Republic and Cuba and the like. And as people begin to recognize that many of these authoritarian traits and repressive institutions can and are emerging in our society, I feel that there is a growing awareness of the need to attempt to combat this repression. One of the significant areas in which repression is taking place is the whole area of the media, the newspapers and the radio.
One high-level concept explored in the book is the idea of economic exploitation, where European colonial powers systematically drained Africa of its resources and wealth for their own gain, leaving lasting scars on African economies and societies. Another key concept is the role of colonialism in shaping Africa's current state. Rodney elucidates how the legacy of colonial rule continues to impact Africa today, influencing political structures, economic disparities, and social inequalities across the continent. Moreover, Rodney's examination of slavery and its enduring effects on African societies brings to light the interplay of historical events that have shaped Africa's trajectory over centuries. In conclusion, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa is a seminal work that challenges readers to confront the uncomfortable truths of Africa's history and consider the implications of past injustices on present-day realities. Rodney's meticulous analysis serves as a poignant reminder of the importance of understanding the complexities of Africa's past in order to pave the way for a more equitable and just future for the continent and its people.